I would actually like to ask the same set of questions to you two, though, and just kind of, bounce it around. But, so I don't know if Sandy, maybe you want to sort of respond first and then hand the mic to Ashley. But same question. So, sort of what is the relationship of painting and recording nature that is personal to you? And when did you start making those connections in the studio?
I think I came to art through my connection to nature, like really wanting to have a sort of close, intimate relationship or describe that intimate relationship with nature through art. And I was just talking to Ashley because we drove up together, that sometimes that started out through writing, like I really love the eco-writers as well. But it sort of fell into painting. I just got seduced by color. And as an undergraduate, I really experimented a lot, so I kind of went to undergrad school in the 90s, and everybody was doing work about the body, and Kiki Smith was the thing, and so did I. I did like a lot of work around the body. And then after I finished my undergrad, I fell back into sort of more traditional landscape painting. And it's funny because I remember specifically, like I was really, we were, as an undergrad, we were like really interested in conceptual art and installation and the cutting edge thing. And then after I graduated and I started making landscape paintings, one of my former classmates said, "Oh, so you're making couch paintings now?" and it was like, yeah, I think that's where I'm headed. So that was, and then I just ever since then I've been doing landscape painting. So let Ashley take it on from there.
Same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
So I was a super shy kid who I didn't speak in school for a couple of years, and I became really curious about other creatures and the way that they communicate. So I became interested in trees and the way that they communicate with each other, the way that butterflies use color flashes to communicate. Even the way that kind of snails use trails to communicate. And I was just really envious of other creatures and their alternative forms of communication. And then I became obsessed with interspecies communication and kind of non-human language and non-human beings, and started making lots of paintings about these things. I also work with a lot of scientists, so I think that's one of the most wonderful things about being an artist, is it's a license to be really curious about things and to have interesting conversations with interesting people. So I've spent time kind of at field stations and with scientists who are recording or making field notes about the creatures that they're studying. And I'm always really interested in kind of the field notebooks and just the visuals of that. It's really interesting to me. Yeah. and the question of like what are the things that we decide to record? What does a scientist studying this specific newt decide is important? Like those kinds of questions are really interesting to me.
So I think that segues really perfectly into the next question, which is what kinds of influences start to sort of creep into the studio, whether they relate to a conventional studio practice or not, right? Whether it is biology labs, field notes, that sort of thing. But what else other than, I guess I'll put it to you this way, Sandy, aside from landscape painting, what else is it that's informing all of this,
So when I first started graduate school, kind of my goal was to figure out all the different kinds of ways of representation for landscape. And like Ashley, I also work. I'm married to a scientist, a climate scientist, and have always been really interested in the sciences, and art was always kind of a way for me to approach kind of a broad range of research questions. When I started doing all of these investigations in graduate school, I was looking at like, how do geologists do cross sections of landscape? So I was thinking about, how do you present a cross section of a landscape? How do you represent a map? An aerial perspective. What about a panoramic perspective? What are all the different ways that we understand place and its kind of numerous abstractions? So I think that took me into the realm of, I sort of fell accidentally into the realm of architecture, even though my father is an architect.
I'm glad you're bringing that up because I was going to mention that later.
So it's interesting because both my father and my grandfather were architects who loved to paint. And I remember being younger and my dad saying, gosh, I wish I had just like gotten an MBA and retired early and become a painter because I really just wanted to paint. And so that always stayed in my head, and I was like, I'm going to become a painter. And somehow in this really sort of strange roundabout way, I ended up teaching in an architecture department. But I love sort of that in-between place of like being kind of the bridge person that is between art and architecture. And there's so many like wonderful kind of overlaps. Like the two disciplines really grew up together in the Renaissance. And so they're all concerned about representation and representation of space and representation of place. And they're also both very concerned with this kind of fictional future. So when you're an architect, you're always designing a building that is not in existence yet, but maybe. And so you're always thinking about what is going to be next. And I think that landscape, the representation of landscape, can actually have a really powerful effect on the kinds of landscapes that are created or imagined or seen. And so, and I'm really kind of a futurist in a lot of ways. I'm always thinking about like, and partly maybe it's because my husband is a climate research scientist, and so he's always thinking like on the millennial scale or, centuries from now, what is the world going to be like? And so I always have my head kind of a little bit ahead of like where we're going. And I like to think about painting as a kind of way of trying to conjure up that future fiction, that future story, that future narrative of, where do we want to go? What kind of landscapes can we hope for in the future? And that's, sort of the Donna Haraway connection. It's like, I think of painting as creating a kind of fictive reality and using that as a tool for sort of representation of future realities that we want to see exist. So yeah, I'll let that go. We have a lot in common. Actually. Yeah. When we found each other, we were like, oh my gosh. You're my missing part.
Yeah, that answer is good. I think that answer covers it. I mean, I'm obsessed with a zillion things, and I mean, as far as artists are concerned, I love looking at artists who are doing things that are very different that I can't. I've been thinking a lot about Cy Twombly lately. He's one of my very favorites, and there are these paintings that have almost footnotes underneath that I think are really fascinating, and I love the wildness of it, and kind of the playfulness of it. I love, and Hilma af Klint, of course. I think she changed everyone's practice and everyone's world. And I mean, I guess I said this before, but I'm very much influenced by all the sciences. And my partner is also a scientist. He's an astronomer. And he works with spectroscopy, which is basically I'm not going to be able to describe it very well, but he's able to understand things about distant galaxies by looking at color. Basically, he's looking at the color spectrum, and he's understanding things about yes, galaxies that are very far away, which is incredibly romantic and poetic to me. And so I'm really interested in like associating colors with different ideas and different events, and kind of using that as a kind of a code that helps us understand things. Yeah.
Good. So what, I mean, you guys kind of just went into a lot, but what kind of connections here in this show are you able to kind of make, right? Like, how are these works talking to each other?
Well, I feel very personally connected to both Ashley and Michelle's work in very different ways, actually. But Michelle mentioned that, you know, we've shown a lot together, and I think we share a very similar kind of appreciation for the local landscape, like the New England woods, and kind of like understanding your relationship in those. How does it feel to be walking, not just, you know, the view of the woods, but sort of how does it feel to be walking through those woods? And so I feel really connected to Michelle in that sense. And Ashley, like I was just saying, when I found Ashley, I was so excited because I have this other kind of project going. I wear a lot of hats, but I'm also a curator. And when I was on sabbatical a couple of years ago, I was working on this sort of passion project that was like inventing this kind of future fiction world. And I realized when I started working on it that it was something I couldn't do by myself. Not only could I not do it by myself, but I didn't want to do it by myself. So I was like, this needs to be collaborative, and I don't know how or why. But I started reaching out to other artists who I felt like were doing similar work. And I don't remember how I found you. Maybe it was Instagram. I don't remember how I found you.
Robert Lee.
Oh, Robert Lee Bell, that's right. But when I found her work, and I said, you know, I want to meet with you and talk about this future fiction project, and, you know, see if you might want to get involved in it in some way. And it turned out like it was this very serendipitous thing. Like, she had already been thinking about all the same things that I was thinking about, like these future fictions and these future languages and these interspecies communications and how, you know, sort of a post-human future. And I had also just read Donna Haraway, and I was really jazzed on that. And so from a conceptual point of view, and from like my futuring side of myself, like I really connect to Ashley and her work. So Michelle and Ashley, I feel really nicely kind of sandwiched between you here in this gallery space.
Same. I agree with all of that. Sandy's project is wild and beautiful, and you all should. I don't know how much of it is in the world yet, but it will be in the world soon. And
there's a teaser on my
yeah.
website called On Distant Keys. That's the teaser, but it's going to be many years, I think, will take to.
Yeah.
But Ashley will be part of it.
And I mean, I feel connected to Michelle's work too. Just the level of intensity, like intense focus and appreciation of the landscape, and also the beautiful colors and kind of the weirdness of it. I don't know. I love both of your work, and I feel so happy to be showing here with you all. It's a really good group. And you all did an amazing job at installing it all. Looks great.
Yeah.
So another question I would like to ask is, if you were to articulate sort of the intention, because I do think that a lot of this work can be entered in multiple ways, and that is a lot of its strength, right? But meaning is very different than intention in a lot of ways. So, you know, various levels of control. how would you articulate maybe what the intention is of this work that's in here now? What do you want it to do?
Yeah, so I always kind of hold intention sort of distantly in my pocket. I feel like, to me, and I've said this to my students, to me it's like having a compass. Like, you sort of want to know generally where you're going, but then, put it away, keep it in your pocket if you get lost, but don't keep looking at it. Like really, pay attention to what's in front of you. And in some ways you have to totally forget about what your intention is and just listen to, like, what does the painting want to become? What does it really want to be? And the way that I work is oftentimes a very intuitive thing. Like lately I've just been like, I just need more yellow, like I just need more yellow. And it needs to be like, and I think a lot about very formal elements like composition and color and, does it feel right? And, like it's just like that. Does it feel right? Does it feel right? No, it's still not right yet. I don't know what it needs. But, you just keep wrestling with it like that. And I find, like, when I do have a too defined intention, that it can really block me creatively. And in some ways, the On Distant Keys, like, it was so specific, this future fiction that I wanted to make, that I couldn't do it. It was like I couldn't live up to my own intention. There was just, it wasn't possible. And so I had to just, like, sort of like, it was like, I want to go there, but I don't know how to get there. Well, I'm just going to not try to go there and go somewhere else and see where I end up, and maybe eventually I'll get over there. But so I have a funny relationship with intention. Like, I'm interested in the scenic route. Like, I don't want the direct route to my goal. I want the scenic route.
Sure. Maybe another way you could even frame that question, though, would be, what is the question in the work that maybe you would consider that you're presenting?
I want people to feel. I want them to feel viscerally moved by seeing it when they see the painting. Like, I love what Michele said about, like, feeling like it's not very solid. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true for my own work. I think in some ways my own work is more about sort of traveling. Like, traveling is a big thing, like this sense of sort of movement. But then I also have, like, different components to my work. Like, this work came out of a practice of drawing a day, which it was, much more about, like, out my window, in my backyard, on my walk, something very specific and concrete and representational. Whereas, the work that canvas that's in the other side of the gallery, or this work here, was more sort of about that kind of unreal fiction world of, like, feeling like you're sort of half there and half not, and you're kind of moving through this ambiguous space. And maybe your imagination starts to think, oh, it's this or it's that, but it's never really quite there. I don't know if that made sense, but I think that's my answer.
I mean, same. I don't know what the finished work actually does, but I do. I think the process is really important. And what was the original question again?
The original question, verbatim, would be, what kind of impact do you hope your work will make?
Goodness, I don't know. But the process, being an artist allows me to have these kind of intimate experiences with, say, a rock. I get to sit in front of a rock and really look at it and look at all of its textures and details for hours and hours to try to understand it. And I think there's something really weird and wonderful about that. I recently went to Williams College to work with their saw-whet owl project. So saw-whet owls are basically the cutest owls on the planet. They're these tiny little owls, like the small. And they're it's a bird banding project. And I got to actually hold the owl and help to record some of the information about the owl. So I was able to have this really like intimate experience with an owl. And from there, there's something really wonderful about being able to have an experience like that, and then trying to make work about some aspect of that. Just the feeling of, a bird's heartbeat, or the texture of a rock. And I often work from those experiences into language. So I might hold a bird and then write down soft or beating or delicate, and then from there build a painting out of it. Yeah, I don't know if that exactly answers the question. But the relationships we get to have as we make work.
Yeah, it's also interesting. It sounds like a lot of very kind of small, intimate, communicative moments. Sort of. Yeah. So the final question that I have, kind of boilerplate, but what are you guys going to be working on next? You kind of alluded to this larger collaborative project that you're working on. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, or not, if it's still kind of hush-hush? Or
No, it's not. It's definitely not hush-hush. It does feel a little bit like it's a kind of an unruly beast at this point, because I have maybe 30 people that I'm coordinating, and so there's a lot of communication attempts that don't always succeed, but it's a big passion project. And the thing about being a studio artist is, for me, I feel sort of like I love solitude, and I love working on my own, and I love my studio space, but I also really love community, and I love collaborating and working with other artists and feeling inspired with other people. And so I need both of those things. And so On Distant Keys is kind of an attempt to sort of build a world with lots of people. It's like I had an idea for this world, and I can't build it on my own, so we need lots of people with vision and with ideas to help build it. And so one thing I want to say, just sort of a side note, is I commissioned Ashley to make those two pieces that are on those two walls are mine. I commissioned Ashley. It was the first time I commissioned an artist to make a piece, and I commissioned her to make it for this future place, and I let her pick whatever the places she wanted to do, and she made 2 pollinators for these different places, and it was so moving to have that kind of collaborative exchange. And so, I look forward to more of that. I'm also working with a musician who is going to write a score for this future fiction. And, so that it really excites me too, to see other people's vision of something that we can make together. And then the other thing I just want to say is, because this kind of future fiction is so sometimes overwhelming and kind of hard to get my head around, I also need a really grounding practice of the drawing a day. And Michele was saying, gosh, your work has really changed, and what's going on? And it has become, this series here has become much more representational, and it did grow out of this practice, which I've given my students. I've even given it to you, a drawing a day, where you just do, spend an hour or so making a drawing a day, and there's this amazing kind of accumulation of knowledge, and almost like you get in shape. It's like going for a run every day. You just get in shape doing a drawing a day. And so these came out of that, and it's really about looking. It's about drawing from life. It's about capturing something that is very grounded in my real everyday moment out my window or on my walk that is part of my world. And so that I feel like I need that here and now practice to counterbalance this like future fiction in another 1,000 years that exists that I can't see. So I almost need to go like back and forth between like this very grounded here and now practice to like thinking about, you know, something kind of just really far out.
Yes. First of all, that was such a fun commission. I've never done anything like that either. It was so much fun to kind of explore your world and to try to make a pollinator for your world. So thank you for that. That was
Well, then it
that was
became
amazing.
your world.
Yeah.
As soon as that happened.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of the magical thing about collaborating.
That was so much fun. Yeah, I am working on a bunch of kind of painting sculpture communications. So I have a painting and a sculpture in front of them, and they're looking at each other, and some of them are talking to each other, and some of them are trying to ignore each other, and some of them are trying to reach out to each other. So there are all these different relationships. I'm also trying to make paintings that actually interact with viewers. So if you walk into a gallery, a painting might blush a little bit if you look at it, or it might change color ever so slightly. So I'm trying to work with people who know about technology, so to try to make this happen. And yeah, so paintings that react to, maybe if you get too close to them, like if you get into their personal space, they might react a little bit. I'm interested in that idea. And I'm also collaborating with my sister on a project where we are going into the woods and trying to understand rocks in various ways, using sculptural tools that we've made and taking photographs of that whole adventure.
Very cool. I guess at this point, I would like to sort of just open it up and see if anybody has any questions for you. So, who's got a question? Meg.
I really wanted to learn 18-month vertically, and actually, with certain symbols, are those like a language that you came through your process in like finding the connection between onion and human? Like, does it really translate into something that you can understand?
So these paintings, and I really didn't get a chance to describe them that much, but basically I was imagining a future civilization, like in the year 3000, and I was trying to think about what problems they would have. And I realized that there might not be any pollinators. So what would that world be like? So what would a civilization be like without pollinators? I thought they would probably be hungry. And then I started thinking about their spirituality, like what kind of spirituality or religion might they have? And I thought that they might create deities that are pollinators. So the pollinators are kind of these protective beings. They might make tapestries. So these are kind of tapestries made by this future civilization. And I imagine they might wrap their children with them, like to protect them. And the language is just kind of a future imagined language that I don't fully understand. I don't know what it is. I've made a bunch of kind of imaginary languages, and some are more specific. But this one, it's a language of some sort, a future language in the year 3000. I have not fully deciphered it yet.
Sandy. So I'm wondering what your feelings are with like realism opposed to abstractionism. As a painter, we speak the same language. You know, I can see in your paintings that I can see your hand in both of them, all of them, the different styles and techniques. But I wonder, you know, a person with let's just call it a non-biased perspective of that, how they would perceive them very differently. So I'm wondering what your feelings towards either is. Because I enjoy and partake in the realism, but I also enjoy abstractionism. So I wonder what your take on that is and how you feel when you're in like each zone? Like, is like there a truer sense of yourself in either, or like what is the foundation? Did one come before the other? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think they feed each other for sure, and I know that on some level I need both, and it, you know, I always felt really kind of insecure with my own style, like, because I felt like my style was so eclectic. Like, there's just so many things that I like, and so many. And I would oftentimes I'd be like, well, what is my voice in all of that? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I have lots of different voices, and you know, now I think that's okay. It's okay to have lots of different voices, and you don't have to. You know, it's really. I just have to feel like when I'm looking at the work that I see some sense of myself or what I want to see in it, you know, like some sort of authenticity. And as long as that's there, like I'm not bothered by it like I used to be. And I just know that I need both. And there are times when I just like really crave seeing something more abstract, and then there's other times when I really just need the groundedness of like something that's very representational. So.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Ashley. Can I ask Ashley?
Sure.
Ashley, will you talk about the eyes in your work? They're so compelling. Like, tell me what your decision is about putting the eyes in your...
Eyes. I don't know.
It's okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about these like hypersensory pollinator beings, and what are all the ways that we can sense the world? So many of them have antennas, way too many antennae that are sensing all sorts of things. And then, what if they have many, many, many eyes? I think which jellyfish? There's an amazing jellyfish, I'm forgetting which one, that has 24 eyes. And 4 of them are facing upwards at all times to look at the mangrove swamp. And then the rest of them are facing down, I think, to navigate, which is so wonderful.
But it's interesting that they're human eyes. They're like your eyes. So I just wonder if, like, yeah, they are.
I don't know.
They're not like jellyfish eyes.
That's true. They aren't. I don't know. I like painting eyes.
Yeah, I like them too. I just was wondering.
Any other questions at the moment? I have one question for you, Sandra. Well, I don't know. Is it a question? Might not be a question. It might just be an observation. But I kind of liked how previously you were talking about the sort of more, sort of attempted futurism in a lot of the paintings, right? And I think that there's a good amount of all of that in all of this work, right? But then hearing you said the worlds, you know, that we would want to live in, right? And hearing you talk about your collaborative work, it's like now it's like you're trying to occupy those worlds that we want to live in too, you know? And at least in this larger managerial project that you're kind of working with now, it almost feels like you're populating it, you know?
Populating the future world or populating the project?
Both. You know, and I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't. I feel like when I decided that I wanted to make this more collaborative, I really felt like I was going out on a limb. Like, oh my God, it was very scary. Like, I just don't know if this is going to be okay to do this, and if anyone's going to want to like build this ship with me, or, you know, like, maybe this is really a stupid idea. And then, like, I just couldn't get it out of my head. So I just was like, all right, I'm just gonna, what the hell? I'm just gonna try and see. And And I did have, some moments where I definitely was like, I still don't know what I'm doing, and this might just really be a stupid project. But then I've also, like in the last year, have had kind of people coming to me saying, like, I want to be part of this. I have a future world too, and I want our future worlds to meet. And then I'm like, you do? Like Ashley and I was so excited that her future world happens in 3000 AD because my future world happens in 3000 AD. And I think like there's a lot of people that might have future worlds, like that they are, because there's a lot of anxiety right now on our planet about the future. And who does that belong to? Is it our future? Is it the planet? The pollinator's future? Is it the rock's future? Is it the, like there's just all this anxiety about like where we're going, and who's telling that story? Is it the climate scientists telling us what the future is going to be, or is it like the poets and the prophets? Is it the butterfly and the dragonfly? Like, I think there's a lot of people thinking about that. And so I kind of want to just say, like, well, let's bring our future visions together and like see what kind of paths we can forge to move forward in a way that helps us resolve some of that anxiety, or maybe not resolve, but just confront it, Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions or thoughts here?
And if any of you are interested in like being part of that, send me an email. I'll bring you into our next meeting.
Well, Sandy and Ashley, Michelle, thank you all so much. This was really excellent show, and congratulations. So.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks.